into the 7-minute questions, and the first question to you is from Mike Bossio, please.
Thank you very much once again, Minister, for taking the time to come to our committee and answer our questions. We're appreciative of the fact that you have done this a number of times now, and it is great to see that commitment. So you mentioned in your opening remarks that not all of the budget 2016 commitments are in there in the estimates. Can you expand on how the government is planning to deliver on the budget without putting commitments in the estimates?
Absolutely. So, in order for us to move forward on all of the initiatives in budget 2016, as planned and without delay, even though not all are contained in the SUPs, the initiatives, the government prioritized the initiatives that were considered stimulus funding and shovel ready. So those were prioritized and they're being accessed in SUP A. So the department will then prioritize the remaining initiatives to move forward in the future estimates. So we believe that things that aren't there are proceeding and flowing as required without impeding the program delivery because we can cash manage it. And so we already, in the areas where we already had authorities. So it means that we have the internal flexibility within the department to advance those funds. And then when we come back for the SUPs, then Finance reimburses our department for what we advanced. And so that's the cash management of how we don't interrupt, but we have to go after the things that we felt were stimulus. And I just give you two examples. One was the one that we said in the remarks was we already had authority for emergency shelters. So we've advanced 4.1 of the new funding to the recipients for the existing network of emergency shelters, but we would have to come back for authority to do the new shelters. So because we already had that, and so the other is that we already had advanced the 28.4 to First Nations Child and Family Services providers in the initiatives like the Enhanced Prevention Program. So that was already in some provinces, but not in BC, the Yukon, Ontario, New Brunswick, or Newfoundland. So what we've been able to do is advance that money on enhanced prevention, that we know that's what we need to do in order to prevent children from having to be apprehended.
Great, thank you, Minister. Now we've talked in past about in the estimates I was showing that a lot of it is grant and contribution based rather than ongoing long-term stable funding that enables the Indigenous communities to establish their own priorities, their own criteria as to where the investments need to be made, and not to have the stringent ties that they have now defining how much is invested in what area. And there are some communities that have established that self-determination and that self-government. I know the department, when I spoke to them, said, oh yes, we're hoping that more can come on, but they're not ready yet. Is the department looking at, once again, to end those paternalistic ties, are we looking at moving forward with having those groups that have established self-government, use them to be the guides and to assist those that haven't got there yet and weren't ready yet to establish that?
It's a great question, and I think that we are trying more and more to use the self-government First Nations people in the Land Claims Coalition to be an example of how you can move forward in actual self-determination. So they are funded with a transfer, not these program spendings, if you can spend it on this but not on this, and that kind of paternalistic approach. So in trying to establish a new fiscal approach, we obviously firstly want to urge more and more communities to get to that self-determination, self-government, and that's what we've talked about here before with Joe Wild and his much more flexible new approach to, if people want self-determination on education or fishery or those kinds of things, we can make an agreement with them on the parts, even if they don't feel quite ready to do a full treaty or full self-government. So we've taken quite a interesting approach to that. Regardless, we know we have to change the fiscal arrangement with all First Nations, meaning that stable, predictable, adequate funding so First Nations can plan like any other organization would be able to plan in not just 1 year at a time where they don't know whether the money's coming the next year or not. And it's impossible for people to plan, and that's the work we're doing with the Assembly of First Nations, but with again using the self-governing nations as an example.
Now, instead of just using them as an example, though, can we use them as as helping to train those other Indigenous nations to become ready, to become self-sufficient, to become to reach that level of self-government where they're instead of the department doing it, and please don't take it the wrong way, but the bureaucrats doing it. I think it makes sense to have those who have gone through it themselves, been burned by the fire, so to speak, to lead then those other groups towards that ability.
Absolutely, and I think that you'll see that. That is happening informally, but I'd love a better way of doing that. As you know, some of the former chiefs are doing that kind of work, consulting other First Nations, but it would be excellent for more to move that way. And even some of the First Nations that are just successful but not yet self-governing are also helping with the governance and the priority setting of some of the more struggling ones. And we were quite keen to hear when we were in Labrador that Natwitshish has reached out to Con River to help them again with setting their priorities and being able to move forward.
And I understand, of course, at the same time that
we're out of time there, Mike. Yeah. We're going to move along. The next question is